What is it about Hot Talk, mentioned on page 135, that attracts a mostly male audience? When we're talking about hot talk or shock jock radio, the prototypical example we can draw on is, say, Howard Stern, something like that. But a lot of these morning shows, even sports talk shows, particularly those morning times, they blur those lines. They try to have that a little bit of that shock jock radio personality or flavor. What is this? There's a For every ESPN, you've got these offshoots emerging, and some have courted controversy and arguably to elevate their brand, right? To elevate the status. And the one that comes to mind is Barstool Radio, okay? And they elevated to the point that ESPN brought them into a fold, but then they started saying a bunch of, nasty, controversial, misogynist things, I'm sure, and were, lost that contract, or someone tweeted something, one of the main players, and then they had to, go. It doesn't just go to apology anymore. I think they were removed or resigned or what have you. So, but why are these popular, and why does it appeal to males? Not exclusively, but heavily, is the question. And what we would suggest, since we've been talking about, and Berger mentions a book by The Sacred and the Profane, Iliad, is that these hot talk programs provide a profane space, if you will, to step outside the cultural norms, or the politically correct spaces that we're sort of increasingly hosting in public areas, right, of mass communication exchange. This is that area where it's, let the guys be guys, and that whole thing. Of course, it's also where we sort of come up with these divisive terms like, locker room talk. This is where we can say the things that we're ironically, the things we're feeling, right? Since we don't like to talk about our feelings, we like to, I don't know. That's an interesting idea, right? The lewd, the crude, the attitude, and so on. So that's what we're getting at with hot talk. This may be really obvious and just reading it incorrectly, but what is meant by spin-offs in the sentence? It made musicians celebrities with many spin-offs. Okay, so artists, styles, genres, programs, and even channels of radio, and music in general spin off in many directions. Okay, so you've got, jazz giving way to blues, giving way to rock, giving way to, other than the rock hybrids just follow the same line, R&B, giving way to hip hop, giving way to rap, giving way to, maybe sort of like gangster rap, then back to R&B, then pop, and then everything, funnels into Beyonce's Lemonade or something like that, right? And so musicology, to use one of those terms, is often about this continuous admixture and genre mixing, okay, that's occurring. And I think the same thing happens if you study and observe the history of radio. This is there's an old movie. Oh no, it's not a great movie. It doesn't have a strong score, but it's an absolute who's who of talent. It's gonna kill me. I'm gonna have to look it up in between clips here. Brendan Fraser, Adam Sandler, Steve Buscemi, these kind of like lovable losers that go accidentally take a radio station hostage, and sort of the plot is, in the midst of holding the radio station hostage, there's this mini drama about, really the movie's about the death of the industry, the death of rock radio, and the constant industry requirement that they rebrand things over and over again, and what it means to kind of lose that. So this is a really obscure movie. It's driving me nuts. if I had like my what do you call it? I need my aides in here, right? The secondary minions that host, that help with the radio host with all of their fact findings and things like that. I need that person on this stat. It's going to come to me as soon as I stop talking about it. But that comes to mind as an example here. But moving on, Ezel has a question. What does Denise mean by the phrase an internet galaxy? In internet galaxy, radio has shown itself to have remarkable staying power. Give example of how radio can sustain itself in an internet media world today. So, radio staying power means it for a time radio was not doing enough to evolve, and that's ultimately the trick, is that there needs to be a certain amount of adaptation on the part of radio to continue in any form. And so examples that come to mind: K-Love, okay, positive, encouraging, K-Love. This channel was started as a syndicated radio channel, but it sort of grew from grassroots listeners and people just sort of picking it up. They were one of the earlier models of offering so much of that content free if you download their app, as opposed to the pay apps and the things like that where you had to charge more. Radio streamed simultaneously online, whether it's talk radio or traditional music. It's what we call simulcasting. Simulcast, so radio programs on the air, but they're also simulcasting maybe the video feed of that radio or just the audio itself. I think about the channel Vivo, okay, and the way it sort of picked up the music video industry and became a platform for that. First through YouTube, then sort of as its own thing, as its own platform entity. Digital, so this is an update on an old adage that digital streaming killed the radio star. Maybe that gives a bit of a response to the question Ezel's asking. Then he quoted that he wrote, quote, despite obvious differences between radio and television, the development of programming for both media is best understood as a single history comprised of two stages. All right, so there's a follow-up question here, and I'm just kind of simplify it. Danisi is demonstrating why and how we can consider the history of mass communication in general through disciplines like media studies. All right, so while Danisi is stressing that TV and radio share parallels, I'm adding on to that to pull back, okay, and look at that macro viewpoint and suggest this is why we can have these different mediums in conversation with one another. They each inform the history of the other, and audiences and advertisers are utilizing all of them, and and that's why it's rich, fertile terrain for us to engage in a discipline like media studies. I hope that was explained clearly. The first form of copywriting is quoted, in the text, creativity and brainstorming. Just a point of clarification, right? Copywriting or writing copy, when we're talking about in here, less about the media law and ethics side of things and more about, we are talking about the script writing for ads, right? Advert script writing. Let's see. In the past, radio advertisements were the state-of-the-art way to advertise to one's product or business, but radio did not give us real visibility. In short, how can the absence of visibility hinder one's business in sales? Page 159. It all depends on knowing your audience. Okay, you have to know your audience. Just like you don't go hand out tickets to the rave party in the church parlor. You don't hand out Comic-Con flyers in the sort of Suburban Wives, Housewives book club, right? Or whatever. I mean, not to say you couldn't at either place, but know your audience, know how to reach them. Where are they at? How do you connect with that audience? Questions from Kimberly real quick. Do you believe, which form of radio advertisements do you believe are most effective and why? I'd probably be wrong. Oh, here we go. What do you believe is the most influential part of radio that has kept it alive so long? Mobility. Mobility would be my one-word answer for that question. Do you believe because of apps like Spotify that radio is on its way out? Internet cuts deep, man, right? And it limits radio. But the medium can survive like TV, like television, if it adapts, okay, before it's too late. It has to find modes and methods of adaptability. But there can be a place for radio. It needs to be more liminal. You can look that word up. Burger, ads, fads, and consumer culture. To what extent do you believe that consumers should believe in what is represented in commercials? To what extent do you believe that consumers should believe what is represented in commercials? It's all about how we feel. We don't have to believe anything, and we don't even have to trust what we're seeing. We just need to feel. We need to be, if the audience, if the consumer is made to feel something, then, and there are sort of ultimate big takeaways in a course like this, or when you study advertising, when you study marketing, and one of those tent pole takeaways is it's all about emotion. It's all about the connection, right? If you get someone to feel something, desire, you've penetrated them, right? They don't even have to believe it. What strategy do you think would be most effective to the consumer culture today? Depends on the audience and the message. So there's no perfect formula anymore, but large corporations know how to, manipulate general audiences quite well. Will, can semiotics really help us in determining what certain messages may mean due to everyone's different point of view? Yes. How would you describe today's culture as relating to post-modernism culture? We're living the dream, or are we living in a dream? I had a surrealist dream last night. First one I can recall ever having, like true surrealism. I tried to type it out when I was stirred, but I don't even bother looking at that note. I'm sure it's just nonsense. Is Jacobson's model an accurate way to view the communication process of today's culture? We teach it in almost every standard communication textbook, right? And say we, I mean my whole discipline. It's even included in our COM 2113 book from Berger, Messages, all right, when he presents a number of basic communication theories. So yes, can we apply the myth model on page 68 to today's people to better understand our behaviors as consumers? Yes. Blakeman, can we, the author, not the student, how can a few simple words change the way we observe an idea or object? Greatly. Will radio ever die out as we expand on technology as a means to send others information? Nothing lasts forever. So by the way, Toys R Us, pouring one out for Toys R Us, okay? I mean that. Jeffrey, gone but not forgotten. Can narrative dramas, as described on page 166, be an influential part of how people receive a particular story? It's all about narrative. It's all about narrative. You master narrative, you master it. Okay. Yes, very close. All right, folks. We have come to the end of the line this week. It has been a treat, a pleasure serving you with our video lecture series. Look forward to more. Week 3 is so dynamic, and so is week 4 and 5. So we're having great fun. Let's keep up the momentum. All right, thank you.